What's up, and welcome back to the MN Viking Zombie channel on YouTube and Twitch. My name is Kyle Smith. I'm honored to be here with Mr. MN Viking Zombie himself, Adam Carlson. What's up, man?
Not too much, not too much. This was a bit of a last minute thing here. We were intending on doing Nightmare Alley, which, as it turns out, is not much of a horror movie. It's a thriller. There's some suspense, maybe. But as far as horror goes, it's not much. We might still talk about it. I don't know. But instead, we looked on Amazon and we found Meander.
Yeah, this is totally Adam's find. I realized that if I'm going to pay for Amazon Prime and all the fun stuff that comes with it, I should probably check that out. Yeah, this was a good one, man. I'm excited to talk about this one. This is a good suggestion.
Yeah, this is a French movie originally titled Meandre, which is, the French version of the word. I thought it was an interesting title considering the movie because to me, meandering means kind of wandering around, but I guess that's where our lead character was at that time in her life in this movie.
Correct. That's a good catch. That's a good reference and call to the title. Our main character in this movie is played by Gaia Weiss. And Gaia, if I messed her name up, I apologize so much. Beautiful French model. She's the main character. Her name is Lisa in this film. And this is one of those, I hate to keep saying character study because you want to know more about the person, but there's good character development. This is a mostly soul actor or actress role. So this is something that I find very difficult. We did the Dispatch or something like that. What's the one we did with Jake Gyllenhaal?
I can't remember the title of it right now.
I can't either. We did the recent one with Jake Gyllenhaal as a 911 dispatcher, and we talked about that as how hard it would be, or at least for me, if you're in a role where it's just you most of the time, you have to do so many little things, and that's kind of what this movie's about.
But unlike that film, this one was based a lot more in physical actions and dialogue. There wasn't much dialogue at all in this movie. It was a French and English movie that kind of mixed off and on with what language was being used, but either way, even if you didn't know either of those languages, you probably could watch this movie just fine.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. We're referencing two movies now that we watched. We're getting into this one. The one before, dialogue was everything because it was a stationary character, and I had to paint a picture to you of what's happening on the outside with his words. Now, in this film, on the complete other side, not a lot of talking, but I had a lot of times watching this where, as a fan of movies and just being sucked into the plot, everything was grueling and it drew me in, and I was catching my breath stopping for this character. And yeah, you're right. Not a lot of talking. They were pretty meat and potatoes in this one.
This was a very short movie. I mean, I don't even know if it reached 90 minutes. That's how much that this movie just kind of flew by. And honestly, for what plot there wasn't, because I thought it was rather loose on plot. We didn't get to know too much about her. We didn't get to know too much about Adam, the guy that apparently was kidnapping women. So, I mean, and a lot about this movie didn't make a lot of sense, but
Yeah,
still,
I'm glad
if
you agree there.
if you're claustrophobic, I don't recommend this movie one bit because it's all very, very tight spaces.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was what I was looking forward to because I was a big fan of Cube back in the day. That movie was fantastic. The way it just set everything up, had those people had to go through to escape the thing, and that's kind of what we had going on here.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned not a lot of talking. We talk about Adam in this film. This is Peter Franzen. He's kind of the scumbag that you find out pretty early on in the movie. He's a terrible person.
But is he though?
I'm hearing that he's stealing women, and then I see. I mean,
you hear it on the radio, but we don't know if that's true.
It's true,
or what his motivations are behind doing it. Because maybe he's doing it. I actually have no idea why he'd be doing it.
Well, it could be like I was referencing to you last night when I saw the preview. I was like, "Oh, this reminds me of Saw." And I'm not saying this in the way that Saw, the universe that's built in, is a lot grimier and more set in reality. This is definitely a sci-fi kind of movie, which is kind of a different.
And I wasn't expecting that.
It wasn't either, which is a fun thing because I enjoyed it in this particular setting.
It took some real curves
Oh yeah.
That I didn't see coming, because at first I didn't know where this movie was set or what time period or anything like that, because based on the truck that they were in and the music and everything, this could have been anywhere from like the 60s to present, or even sometime in the future.
Right. The film starts out with Lisa laying on the ground. She's thinking about what we eventually find out early on and throughout the whole movie. She's lost her daughter. She's not off. She's not very well off. She's contemplating life pretty much, like, what do I do? She feels emptiness. And then she's approached by a stranger in a car. She gets up out of the road and out of the way. And initially she turns down the help. And then that one little piece of information that she held on to, oh, well, it's 6 or 7 miles to the nearest gas station. She said, all right, fine, I'll go along with this. And that was obviously, if you see the movie and see what's happening in the preview, you're like, oh, well, that's where everything essentially went wrong.
And everything in the preview felt like it was in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. After you see
it wasn't one of those previews that gave everything away or sprinkled little nuggets as to what was going to happen. Because I'll be honest, even after watching that preview and watching this movie, I don't know if that preview was for this movie.
That's a good point. Well, let's see your point too. Like, this was very excellently put together. Because like you said just now, we mentioned the sci-fi element of this movie. If you look at the trailer, you don't have any clue that that's a thing there.
Nope.
And we'll talk about it a little bit, a little further, a little bit, a couple more minutes into this. But basically, in a nutshell, we don't know what time period it's set in. We find out, okay, she's trapped there in what looks to be like interconnected pipes. We don't know if it's underground. We don't think so, because you can hear things outside. I thought initially it was in like Antarctica or something. Everything was, with the lighting, it looked like it was really cold. But man, you have to give a shout out to the writers and the people who come up with these weird, messed up ideas in this movie. For essentially, this is torture or death. It's going to be either really slow and painful, it's going to be really quick and painful, it's going to be gruesome. But if you're looking, and this is not even a spoiler, if you're looking for a movie that has some unique kills or unique ways to be injured or hurt, they did their homework on this movie, and they did it in a way where the whole time, like you were saying earlier, for the trigger warning here, if you're claustrophobic, this is a mental marathon, this movie, from back to front.
It's weird because after watching it, I went and I looked up some of the other reviews of this movie, because I got to be honest, I had to see what other people were thinking.
Sure.
And a lot of them really thought it was a torture porn kind of movie. And I've watched quite a few of those kind of movies, and I didn't really get that impression from this movie. Sure, the woman went through a lot of trials, and her body got ripped up a bit, but overall, I didn't feel like the gore factor was super high.
No, and what I think, to agree with that point, is what I think happens here is they give it to you at the right times and in the right amount. The rations of those particular scenes and the build up beforehand to each of those, you ride that wave up and down. And I felt like, I won't say perfectly, I don't think there's a perfect movie out there, but it fit. You start
it
from
wasn't
the beginning.
Gratuitous.
No,
it wasn't
not at all.
Like non-existent. It was there when it needed to be. But as a fan of those kind of movies that pit people against situations that they have to push their body to the absolute limits, I didn't feel like this really quite got there.
Yeah, in her particular situation, she's small enough to figure this out, and I won't say she goes through unscathed. She definitely gets her cuts, bumps, and bruises, but I was thinking about like a guy like mine and your size. We could barely fit in those tubes, if at all.
I'd be dead in a minute. I wouldn't have made it past that first curve.
And then she gets through. After that, there's these little blocks that are like 70% of the way, and she kind of twist and contort and get around. And there's a little element of time. There's a lock on her wrist, and we don't know what kind of bracelet it is, but it'll count down to let you know, like, hey, you got to start moving or this is going to happen to you.
Even a woman with a little bit of extra curves, I don't know if she'd have made it through that.
Not a chance. A woman with a large chest, you're not getting through there. Large hips, you're not getting through. It makes sense too. Like we said earlier on, she's a French model, so her body type.
They had to have been targeting really petite women.
Yes,
for this adventure, and we did see that a lot of the corpses and stuff, they weren't, even if they were bloated after being there for a little while, they all seemed like smaller people. So I like that it was kind of consistent on that.
Yes. gosh, that's where this movie will really pull you in for the amateur horror film lovers like myself. If you want to see things that make your brain go, ooh, that's creative and it's messed up, but it's feasible. A lot of this is feasible. Um, there's a lot of fire that comes through. It made me think of the Saw franchise, especially in the second movie of that franchise. There's an element to get burned. There's an element where you can drown. There's claustrophobia many times in this movie. And then they give you hope with some of those. You remember so they're going down a lot of these interconnected pipes. So you can go left, right, up, down, all that fun stuff. And then every so often, especially in the fire chambers, they have these boxes that are big enough for one person that'll shield you from those elements. And I thought that was such a tease. Two. What's that?
It looked big enough for two. Come on.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
they shared.
But when you have the likes of Adam in this movie and a zombie, you're probably not going to want to share with many people.
Well, you're not going to share with the zombie, but
yeah.
I don't see any reason why her and Adam couldn't have stacked in there and worked together a little bit.
Sure.
That to me was a little bit disappointing. But I understand why she would feel that way towards Adam too. But we never got any sort of motivation for Adam, why he was in there after abducting the woman to put her in there, or if this was even realistic at all, because there are so many different ways to interpret this movie.
Yes.
Like, I know a lot of people that when I saw and read their comments, they felt she died when he slammed on his brakes and her head hit, and that was her trying to fight her way to earn her way back to her daughter and get revenge against Adam for what he did to her and the other girls. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Sure.
And yeah, this is a movie that you're going to watch and you're going to interpret it as you go. And your interpretation might be vastly different from someone else's.
Yeah, I was left with mixed feelings at the end. I was very, I wonder if at the very end when she floats away, I mean, literally floats away into the brightest light possible. I thought that she had passed away there. She has a foot injury, her first major injury there. And I think what I interpreted was she had went to the afterlife, and this was it. She's with her daughter again, because you see her daughter in the movie earlier, and then she says, "Hey, I'm proud of you, Lisa." And if your kid calls you by your first name, probably you're going to think, okay, this is a test. This isn't really you, which she did. That had to have been hard. And I felt that for her, being a parent myself. You're like, man, I don't know that I could do that, but she was smart enough to figure out that whatever game or whatever system she was in was testing her always. And that's the kind of the thing that I came away with this movie. And they picked certain people out because they knew they weren't going to make it, but they chose her specifically for whatever reason. We won't really know, because they knew that she had the wherewithal and the fortitude to pass this test, which she at the end says, whether she died or not, she says, I did it. I'm here and I did it all. So what I also liked.
So strange. The curves on the sci-fi were what made this movie either make or break for people. I think people that want a movie that's more based in feet on the ground, horror, claustrophobia, they might get a bit disheartened when some of the stuff like the weird alien egg room, we'll call it.
Yeah, I just looked at it as the healer, because when it comes down, you're like, oh my god, it looks like literally like in the movie Alien. It comes in and you're like, oh my goodness.
Oh, you're talking about the healing robot. I'm talking about that weird, reproductive organ room with the face and the walls, and
it looked like they were going in and out of a. Sorry guys, we're gonna curse her, but like in and out of an asshole. You're like, what the hell is this? Yeah, that was weird. I had nothing for that. I was just letting that scene come and go because I had no idea where they were going with that and why it was there. It felt like maybe it was the heartbeat of the operation, the brains.
It opened up the thing for it being an alien kind of movie with the non-humanoids.
Yep.
Which again adds to another possible ending to this movie, that the aliens brought her up and brought her to a planet, because that planet didn't look very earthy.
No, not at all. And that was the cool thing that ended the movie, the pan out. You were like, where is she? Because it looks like Earth with a waterfall. And then once they get out of that area, definitely not. Nothing that it looks like here. There's similarities, but it's definitely not our planet. So you have no idea.
But yeah, the healing robot, that must have been someone important to her that I don't know if I missed something along the way as to why that robot was taking compassion for her, and why. Well, she almost gave up once, and the robot was going to inject her with something, and at that moment she decided she wanted to live again, so it stopped. But yeah, that whole sequence was odd as well.
It was odd. I know it was there to give you that one last like comeback for the main character, which was nice. She ended up figuring out, which I like. Yet again,
she didn't figure it out. That's the problem. Is that she followed all the rules. Once she found her wrist thing and saw that she had to go certain directions based on the tattoo on her wrist. But guess what? The tattoo lied. The last room, there was no exit, and the last room was booby trapped.
Yep. And that's where she lost part of her right foot, which was gruesome.
Which again makes you wonder. This movie, it definitely, you can look at it as being a happy movie that she got to be with her daughter again, but there's also so many different glimpses of hopelessness and her when she would pass out and then she'd start right back over in the room she started in, was just frustrating to watch for a moment, because man, for someone who really was on the brink, she was fighting so hard to live, and she was using that desire to make her daughter proud. Maybe they never really gave her a real motivation for life at that point.
Correct. And a lot of us wouldn't have lasted. Granted, I feel like you saw it a couple times, like when she passed out. When you pass out, you could be out for minutes or hours. Depends. All these rooms are booby trapped to a certain thing. So with it being a living organism, we feel like that controls it. Maybe they were sparing her to let her come back. And like to your point, what I was saying before with the healing room, when it actually like made me think of Alien, you're just thinking of that scene where you're like, oh my goodness, when you see this come down and a little mouth chomping at you, you're like, this is it, man. This is all. And it's there to help, which is wild. They have this weird suit on, and I think they get their nourishment through their belly button, like you would do when you were a child in the womb. And then they would do all the scar healing. And eventually she got so many cuts, bruises, and scrapes, she was just like, please leave me alone. I don't want to live anymore, which we talked about. But yeah, what an odd, weird thing to represent the positive there. Because outside of what we know, that thing's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it was
really no reason for it to have a human face mask, like skeleton skull, nothing like that.
It was odd, but it drew me in. It didn't turn me away. It just made me pay attention. And I think that was the theme through this whole movie. We've talked a lot. We've done a lot of movie reviews now on this channel. I didn't look at my phone during this one. It was on my phone, but I had no desire to look away, whatever else. This one had me pretty much in the palm of their hand this whole time, because I had questions, and it was at a pace for me where I kept getting questions answered. Or as the fan of a horror film, you want some more action, and it's every 10 minutes you're going to get something big, which I enjoy.
Yeah, the tests where she was trying to learn how to do and how to get through, and the room with the acid that her knee got touched in. Ooh. That was a pretty wicked room. Mm-hmm. You talked about the one where the foot got chopped. There was the room with, I think it was like spiked vines running through it. That kind of tore through her flesh.
That was awful. Rooms where she could have been crushed vertically. Obviously, we talked about a bunch of the ones with furnaces. That was terrifying. I mean, it would have been a quick death, but yeah, there's a lot. And then getting through that by yourself is hard enough with timers and trying to figure out mazes and claustrophobia. But then having guys like Adam chasing you or this weird zombie, like the stress of it, this movie will stress you out if you get really invested. And you really.
So do you think whoever was doing this weird test, if this was a reality, do you think that they had something on Adam to where he had to collect people to like save his family? Or do you think there was more of a story there? Or how did he end up in there? And why did it look like he had been there months longer than her?
Oh, absolutely. He looked like I didn't know it was him at first. I had no idea. I just thought it was another random person.
There was so much confusing about this movie that I felt should have been either explained or maybe cleaned up a little bit.
Yes.
For how kind of messy of a movie it was still enjoyable.
It was oddly charming in the most disgusting, sick way.
And I was not expecting the sci-fi twists and turns, the weird monsters that would show up. And honestly, all I was expecting was like some saw-like traps, kind of like Cube, and I was expecting a French Cube. I guess that's what I was kind of expecting, and it was not that.
On a basic level, I'm a musician for you guys that don't follow us on the Purple People Pod or don't know who I am. This is Adam's channel. He lets me come on. We love doing movie reviews together.
Absolutely.
And at a basic level, in a music comparison and analogy, this movie was like the band Tool for me. It was fun, and it was way different than anything I've seen in a very, very long time. Would I watch more? Yes, but you can't do it with this character, unfortunately, because she's done. But you're right. That's the one negative.
Or is she? Is she on an alien planet?
You're right. You're right. They could lead it right into another set of traps, and now she's going to save her daughter. Like, there you go. There's a spinoff. But
I did read the interview with the person who made this movie, and they said there are hints, very tiny hints, along the way to what really happened and what the real story is. And I gotta say, I didn't pick up on really any of them.
Well, I'm wanting to know about the tattoos, the wrists, why hers were different. Why would his ending be different than hers? Maybe did he have a real exit? It doesn't feel like there's an exit here for real. I feel like they're doomed to no matter what. But
because they were pushing her through these tunnels, and at the end of these tunnels, it looked like there was a big bright blue sky with clouds, and she'd get there and it'd be a screen. And she wouldn't be able to push through.
Honeycomb screen, and she can't get out. And you felt that helplessness and that hopelessness really swarm over. You're like, oh my gosh, I thought she got it. And one of the most gruesome tests at the end too. That was wild. But yeah, you feel a connection with this person. You feel like she's genuinely a good person, or at least on the surface, and you want to root for her.
I don't know if I had that connection.
Oh, really?
I mean, losing her daughter, it's hurtful and everything, but being a single guy, I don't really relate to that a whole lot because I don't have a kid. And
sure.
I didn't feel like I got to know her well enough in the beginning before she was placed in. And after she was in there, I didn't feel like I got to know enough about her then. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about her. And I know that we complained in some other movies that they take too long establishing things. And this one takes almost no time whatsoever to get right into the meat and potatoes of what they want to do with the movie. And they took very, very little time establishing and developing characters early on.
You know what's interesting? I forget the very last movie that we did, but you said I would have liked it to have been a little longer. I absolutely could have used another 30 minutes in this movie.
Yeah. And this movie was very, very short. If you're looking for a little snack size movie with some claustrophobic kind of stuff going on and just a person fighting for their life and trying to survive, it's a really good movie. I mean, you could really enjoy it. But if you're looking for a story-driven experience to where you can connect with characters and have a logical story that goes forward, this might not be for you.
Yeah, the IMDb rating is 5.6 out of 10.
But Rotten Tomatoes is much better. I think it's closer to 70.
That's good.
And your screen went jet black.
There we go. I'm on IMDb. I was trying to find the time for this. So you got to think an intro is usually going to take up about 2 minutes, and then at least 5 for the credits. This is if you crunch those off just as a guesstimation, this is an hour and 23-minute movie. It's very quick. Yeah. I feel like an hour and 45 would have done this movie solid by leaps and bounds. And that's to echo your point earlier, was
just to get a little bit more into that lead character.
Yes, and most of that time that I would allot would at least half of it would have been at the beginning.
Yep.
Show me some of that so I feel the pain of you losing your daughter. I have to find out later why you're laying in the middle of the road and you look like a junkie to me, and I'm like, oh, you're just really sad because you lost your child. Oh, well, I don't like having to backload that later. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure you feel the same way, but yeah, about 10, 15 more minutes in the front and then a couple more at the end. That would have been great. But overall, like, I got to give this movie a lot of credit for the creativity, because I've never seen anything with this idea based in this reality, because it took a left turn, but it kept me interested. Because normally when you go off the rails a little bit like that, I lose interest, but I was still pretty interested through the movie, even though it had holes.
I felt like a lot of the puzzles too felt kind of familiar, reusing some of the things like the fire tubes and things like that. And yeah, I get it that you don't want to spend a lot of a budget to make these rooms that all look completely different, or spend a lot of money to make the new puzzles that she has to figure out. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I would have liked a little bit more diversity on that part. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this as a survival movie, the things that she does and pushes herself through to try to get to be with her daughter once she realizes that her daughter is, I guess we'll say, in there.
Right.
And then she knows that according to her risk, she has to go the other way. So she's got to tell her daughter, hey, I can't go with you. But also, did you get a weird sense of relief when she was crawling through all those tunnels and eventually she finally gets to that room where she can stand up?
Yes, that was.
Did you kind of like see her stand up and be like, oh boy, I'd be stretching and just, oh, that would feel so good.
That was such a scene of relief in so many ways too, not only physically, and it got really dark really quick in there, but not actually lighting wise, but like mood wise, because she goes through the life of her child. So there's a relief of getting a little bit of happiness in what she.
Yeah, she got to watch a weird little part of her movie with her dad standing over her crib, and
yep,
this movie was odd.
Yeah, it was very odd. Yeah, she got a sense to stand up. Physically, she got relief from standing up and crawling around. Mentally, she got a little bit of relief there before some, reliving hard times like her daughter's death and what happened to her. But she got to see things that made her happy. And it was kind of like a recharge to be like, okay, this is why I'm in here. Here's a little glimpse of happiness. Here's a snack mentally. And then you see that crazy thing where there's a body climbing over top of you and you're like, oh shit, I forgot I'm still in a maze.
Right.
And that was, I thought that added a cool horror element to it. It's like, hey, look, you can have happiness here, but we're going to give that to you in very short little stints. You got to get back to business now. But yeah, that was cool. I did feel relief there and just be able to breathe out there for a second. Cause man, the claustrophobia in this movie, it hit hard a couple of times.
So that's basically in a nutshell what we have is we have a movie that was quite open-ended with a character that we didn't get to know a whole lot about, in a movie that took a lot of left and right turns to get where it was going. And then once you got there, you still really didn't know what you just watched.
I'm going to give this movie, that's my big negative here. And we're both in agreement on that. We wanted more. We wanted to know more. And that, of all the things we said negative about all these films, some of these films felt blotchy and just kind of thrown together, like kind of like The Hangover, how they wrote that awesome comedy. Just get drunk on tequila one weekend and they're like, this is what we're going to write. That I don't feel like this movie has that at all, but I do feel like they neglected some areas and they heavily relied on others. And I'm looking for that balance. That's why I'm going to take some points off my rating, but this was different. And I like the character. I like that there's a small cast they had to work with. And I think they did that well. So I'm going to give them A+ in the creativity department.
The casting was well done.
Absolutely.
The little girl actress was fantastic as well.
Yes. And I have her name here so we can give a shout out. I think it was Nina. Romaine Libert. So sorry, these are all foreign names.
And they absolutely nailed the lead woman.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they really could have found an actress that gave the kind of performance that she did in this movie. I would have liked to have seen her touch a little bit more on dramatics, because outside of the scene with her daughter in the tunnel, we didn't get to see her really extend that part of her acting. And I felt like that part alone, that smaller scene, was one of the strongest parts of the movie.
Overdrive. I'm trying to see if she was in anything else. Yeah, that's got Scott Eastwood in it. She was in that and Overdrive. I'm looking at some of her other shots too. Yeah, I agree with you. She had to do a lot of scenes of panic and pain, which I think she did great with.
I believe Gaia Weiss has 3 movies coming out this year.
I'm looking now. 2021 Shepherd came out, so we can look at that. British horror drama films. We might check that out. I'll keep it real without keeping it not classy here. We're both men. We like chicks on this channel. She's a very pretty girl, and she was in a really cool horror movie. So if you need a combo that I like,
I got to go off that because she is not typically my type of girl. I mean, if I were watching this for an attractive factor, I don't know if I'd have dove in on this. I like my girls a bit more curvy and meaty. What can I say?
Hey, that's fine.
But she'd have been dead in this movie, that girl.
I'm just going off of her. I'm on her Wikipedia page now, and it says she's a French model, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
get it. She's got a beautiful smile, but
Oh, absolutely.
that's cool. Hey, that's to be that talented too, to do all of those things. Like, what are we even doing on the internet right now? Kick ourselves down a peg or two. But Guy, we're a fan of yours.
Yeah, she's very talented.
Very talented. This was a cool movie. I like the idea. Unfortunately, there were some holes and a lot of things that I have questions about. Maybe I would give it a rewatch, but that's better than most of the things we've said, especially recently. The last 4 or 5, we haven't really suggested any rewatches. I would go back with this, and I would, if I could make it a perfect world, Adam, I would watch this with you, and I would have
Right.
a pause, and we could discuss and go back again. But I would rewatch this movie. So I'm going to give this movie, in my rating, a 6.7, which is one of the higher ones that I've given. To be really elite for me, you're going to have to hit the 8s and the 9s, and that I had to knock off at least like a 1.5 for, okay, what does this mean? Because I had that a couple times in this movie, but the creativity really drew me in. But I would suggest this movie to people if you want to have your mind go, what the heck, man? What did I just watch? It's very intriguing.
See, my grading scale is more like the school grading scale. I think of a 6.0 as being passing.
Sure.
And then anything past that is just up letter grades. So I like this more than, but I also didn't like it as much as some of the other movies that we watched. So I think I gave Antler like a 6.7 or 6 or something like that. So I'm going to give this one a 6.9 because I did like this one a little bit more. It was a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a little while, just based on the small little pieces that I've seen. And I actually saw an ad for this before another foreign horror movie that I watched maybe like 6 or 7 months ago. And then Mr. Smith told me that he had Amazon. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll take a little browse on Amazon. And I found this one in there. I was like, yeah, I'll throw this one by him. But yeah, we're going to have a couple more here. Of course, like I just said, this movie, you can find it on Amazon Prime Video right now. But we're going to be trying to stick a little bit to the Amazon, the Netflix, and some of the other streaming services. I know that we do want to do the new Scream movie as soon as I get a chance to watch it. We do also have a lot of interest in doing the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie when that comes out.
Can't wait.
So we have some stuff kind of lined up here, but that's not going to stop us from grabbing some of these other movies and talking about them. There's no reason we can't grab a nice flick like Meander and just talk about a movie that we both kind of liked out of nowhere.
Yeah, for different and some of the same reasons. And for me, like I just been watching classics this week. I rented Basketball, A Few Good Men. Forget what else there. It just ranges of stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't gotten my horror in for the week, and it just happened. Life throws you a bone like that. Adam said, "Hey, you said you had Prime. How about this one?" And I looked at another. I remember one that you gave me last night, which I'd probably be interested in. But as soon as I saw this, if you're a basic low, I don't want to say low level, I gotta hype myself a little more. If you're an amateur horror film reviewer like myself, and you haven't dove into the pool like Adam has vast knowledge of this stuff, this is one of those where you can relate to it on a certain level. Like you said, Cube, I immediately thought of Saw and how this movie was set up.
Have you been able to watch Cube yet?
No, I haven't, but I will add
That's
that to
going to go on your list. I've
Cube?
also challenged Mr. Smith, who's going to a horror convention soon.
Mm-hmm.
The lead actress in Sleepaway Camp is going to be there, and he has never seen Sleepaway Camp.
Let's go to Google here.
And that has to happen. I believe that is on Prime as well.
Oh, if it's on Prime, then we can definitely make that happen.
If it's not on Prime, then it's on Peacock, but it's on one of the two.
I was in dark mode. You can't see anything here. I'm sorry about that, guys. Yeah, absolutely.
The movie we were talking about on Netflix is more of a teen supernatural kind of movie, and I think that's a little bit more up your alley, Mr. Smith, because you like the ghosts, the supernatural, those kind of horrors more than I do. But if done well, it can draw me in.
Yeah, we're gonna get Adam to do. I'm gonna get him to do this movie eventually at some point. There's a thriller about a Boston morgue that I got that I'm in love with. It scared the shit out of me when I watched it, and I was like, well, I'm a grown man scared about something I know is fake. But it was good. It scared me, and I watched it at night, and I was like, I have to watch a comedy after this because I can't go to bed right now. We're gonna get him to do that at some point. I'm gonna pressure him into it, but we're excited. Next week, Texas Chainsaw comes out on Netflix. You guys check that out. The trailer looks great. And the Scream. I'm hoping you get to see Scream soon, man. Me and Mr. West on the Purple People podcast page, we're huge Scream fans. It's just my era of growing up. It makes me feel nostalgic, makes me feel good. And
Maybe we'll do that Jennifer Lopez, Owen Wilson romance movie that just came out.
Oh no, I can't. It looks so bad. Even the idea is just silly.
I feel like they've done that movie before.
They've done it.
That concept seems very familiar.
It's like what happens in Vegas. They get drunk one day and they just get married. And they're like, I love that movie because it's funny, but I'm not watching that. But fun fact. Next weekend, and I'll share a photo on here when we do the Scream review. I bought a photo op with Neve Campbell, so I'm gonna meet her, and I am so freaking excited. So my nerd's coming out, man. My inner nerd is coming out, and I'm embracing it, and I am so.
But if you don't watch Sleepaway Camp before you go, I am gonna punch you in the face when I see you.
Well, I have to watch it then. Can't have that happen.
Because that's a classic right there.
Okay, I'll add it in. You said it's on Amazon?
It's either that or it's on Peacock, one of the two.
Well, if you don't have, I don't have Peacock, I can find it. It's fine.
Oh yeah, it's got to be everywhere. All right. On that note, thanks again for everyone who tuned in. We didn't have anyone live in the chat today, which is kind of sad. We usually like that interaction, but this was kind of a spur of the moment review that we kind of threw up here, and honestly, we just wanted to pop on here and talk about some horror movies. So if you're watching this, you are most likely on my YouTube channel, and you most likely searched for reviews for this movie. So if you watch this and enjoyed it, we do have a lot of other movies that we've talked about. You can check them out. You can suggest some movies. Head on over to Twitter, Instagram, wherever, MN Viking Zombie, and you can talk about what's going on over there. Oh, we do have my cousin Ed.
Thank you, Ed. I like that name as well. Chainsaw 54. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll be back with another horror review one of these days, and we'll talk about that. You got any final words there?
No, just saying to give you. I'm trying to do all our plugging like we do at the end of the football podcast. Follow Adam everywhere. If you watch this or you watch this later, we all try to keep the same handles here. If you have suggestions, you're welcome, man. Thank you so much. If you have suggestions, shoot it Adam's way. This is his handle on mostly everything. This is my handle if you want.
We have access to most every movie. If it's in theaters, we might have to wait until it comes out on video, but most on-demand movies or streaming service movies we can check out. So, just let us know if you have one you want us to watch.
That's it for me. I'm excited to do Texas Chainsaw coming up, but we have more than just that. We have a lot in the bag.
Maybe we'll squeeze in another. We don't know, but we'll see. Yeah, on behalf of Kyle and I, thanks for checking out this movie review, and stay bloody, friends.